If you watched my last video, you know that I am still showing outstanding support for Palestine, and I am going to once again be promoting the same service that I did in that video. This service is Nomad, which provides eSIMs to people in Gaza and the West Bank to allow its citizens to communicate with their loved ones and with emergency services. There is currently a shortage of eSIMs in Palestine, so I very much do recommend that you go and take a look at this service. A few months back, I made a video where I covered a handful of unrelated lost media cases, which was really kind of fun being able to talk about so many different things and not having to worry about them being linked with one another or about filling out the time for the video. Today, I've done the same thing and compiled some more lost media cases that I'm particularly interested in. I love puppets and puppetry a lot. I've brought this up many times, and I don't think there'll be a day in the near or far future where I don't bring it up. It's just something that I consider to be one of my many strong interests. Of course, the most popular gaggle of puppets happens to be the Muppets, who we'll be talking about in this entry. In the very slim chance that you aren't familiar, the Muppets are an assorted troupe of puppets created by Jim Henson, who had their own show in the late 70s and early 80s, and have had multiple shows and movies since then. I would love to do an entire Muppet history video one day, so hey, if you're watching this after I end up doing that, then you've already been imparted with a wealth of Muppet knowledge, and I need not continue rambling about them. In particular, the first show dedicated solely to the Muppets, aptly named The Muppet Show, would consist of many skits and musical numbers performed by the puppets, in the fashion of a variety show, sometimes featuring celebrity guests, and notably, spoiling elements of The Empire Strikes Back in minor ways.
Excuse me, Master Luke, but what is this strange world we've come to?
Beats me, 3PO. Seems we've landed on some sort of comedy variety show planet.
This show was a major hit with a wide audience of kids and adults alike, even though it was aimed at the latter, trying to break the Sesame Street curse of sweetness and education being forever attached to puppets and puppetry. The Muppet Show ran from 1976 to 1981, amassing 120 episodes over its 5 seasons, and has become a beloved classic to fans who both saw it air for the first time and those who have only seen it through reruns or maybe even streaming. Throughout the years after the end of the beloved Muppet Show, there have been many attempts to make a follow-up, some being successful though brief, and others not even getting close to the chance of making it that far. In the present day, there is no truly faithful updated version of The Muppet Show, and the closest thing we've ever gotten to a similar ensemble-driven TV series featuring the whole cast was The Muppets, a mockumentary-styled sitcom that ran for 1 year between 2015 and 2016 on ABC. The most successful productions both before and after Disney's acquisition of the Muppet IP in 2004 have always been movies and specials, and even then, many will argue that Disney has grossly misutilized the Muppets and doesn't quite know what to do with them. The Muppets have had many a swing and a miss with Disney, but also had some before Disney came to what they would think is the rescue. And one of those swings is today's topic. Around 2001, a new Muppet series was being proposed for Fox that stood to be sort of a soft reboot for the original Muppet Show, or at the very least some kind of show inspired by it. A few press releases had gone out stating a few facts about the show, named The Muppets Present, explaining that it was currently in production at the time. The press release stated that the show would feature the cast of The Muppet Show, but would not be a remake like some outlets suggested, and would also feature new members in the cast. Kermit and Pepe even made an appearance in a pitch reel for the show to advertise it and give it a basic premise, promising that it would be much edgier than early Muppet series. Prior to this series being planned, another similar one had both aired and failed, called Muppets Tonight, which happened to fail for the very reason that it didn't focus enough on the original cast. The Muppets Presents writing and production would likely learn from this, leaning more towards the roots of the original Muppet Show. Unfortunately, even with all the fuss about this show coming out, and the fact that 2001 marked the 25th anniversary of The Muppets Present would never end up airing. Even worse, this project sort of quietly faded into obscurity in a sea of other announcements regarding new Muppets content, and was just as soon forgotten. The only confirmed content we do have from this show is a single image from the pitch reel, and a mysterious pilot script for a, quote, untitled new Muppets project, written by Matthew Berry and Eric Abrams. The script has the feel of what a 2000s Muppet Show would be like, and also mentions the Fox network by name. So it's more likely than not that this is the script for this pilot. This pilot definitely does follow in the footsteps of the original Muppet Show, but feels a little more SNL-like and parodic, so maybe it might be better that this never actually hit the air, or it could have been lights out on the Muppets for good. Neither me or other bigger lost media YouTubers ever really talk about lost music, and I think it's because it's such an expansive category and can have some real obscure things that are a part of it. Of course, big bands like Green Day are obviously gonna have their lost music accounted for, but the only people who are gonna end up knowing about smaller bands' lost content are most likely going to be die-hard fans. That's why I think it's so important that we do cover lost music, to get more eyes on things and potentially new leads from a boost in interest. So with all of that being said, I wanted to talk about some lost media from a band I really enjoy, and yeah, it's okay. You can laugh at me for liking AJR. If you don't know who AJR is, they're an indie pop band composed of three brothers, Adam, Jack, and Ryan. While they've had pretty moderate success in the mainstream, having very popular current songs, their history goes back much further, having had their true start in the early 2010s. It all started as simple songwriting and music production in their living room of all places, where they'd then post to YouTube and other streaming platforms to get their music out there.
Please do enjoy. Thank you.
Hi there. Did you actually just do the whole thing?
Between 2010 and 2012, 3 independent music projects were created by the band. 2 albums, Born and Bred and Venture, as well as an EP named after the band. If you've ever heard that song from 2012 that sampled SpongeBob's famous "I'm Ready" quote, that was AJR and that was their first big hit. They tweeted the link to the video out to as many big names as they could, and after gaining recognition from Sia, whose manager would contact them about becoming theirs, the band officially took off, having 4 albums ahead of them: Living Room in 2015, The Click in 2017, Neo Theater in 2019, and OK Orchestra in 2021. At the time of writing this, their new album wasn't released yet, but I will let you know in editing how much I liked or disliked it. I can let you know in voicing how much I liked or disliked it. I did not like it. I currently own 2 of the 4 albums and hope to collect the other 2, but there's no hope of me owning any of their early content, as you might have guessed, because it is either very hard to find, was never released physically, or is even lost media. Of the 3 projects I mentioned before, almost none of the songs have been found. Born and Bred had 14 tracks, with the album being about 50 minutes long. Venture had 10 songs that clocked in at around 35 minutes, and the EP AJR was a 15-minute EP with 4 songs. At some point in the band's history, they decided that everything they made before becoming official just wasn't a good representation of their sound, which absolutely makes sense. Even just by listening to Living Room, you get more of what seems like a pop folk vibe, whereas by listening to their more recent music, it's full-blown indie pop. Living Room is a weird amalgamation of both, and this is because Born and Bred, Venture, and AJR were all made with the sound that they pursued before, and Living Room marks a point in which they are finding what their identity is now, which is why they decided to distance themselves from the old one. Going in order, Born and Bred, AJR's first and longest album, was once lost for a long time, but recently had a full upload made onto YouTube in May of 2023 by user Cyanus. While it has stayed up for this long, the band has kind of non-verbally expressed that they don't really want their old content to be available anymore, so it's possible it could be taken down in the future, though I trust that this user will still have it even after the upload was made, and that other fans have downloaded the album. I was listening to it while I was writing this, and someone in the comments said, "We're making it out of Bible study with this one," and that is a painfully accurate assessment of the album. This should have stayed lost. I am so upset that I had to hear this. The bones are there, and it's not the greatest AJR content I have ever consumed, but it's always a treat to hear Adam sing. For Venture, unfortunately, this story hasn't ended. The tracklist and lyrics to the songs have been archived, and some of the songs have been located and made available, meaning that 4 of the 10 songs can be listened to. The other 6 are currently lost, and I did personally look for these songs through the Wayback Machine on both AJR's website and iTunes from around when the album was released, with no luck. If you think you might have any of these songs downloaded on an old iPod or early iPhone or something like that, maybe take a look. And given the content of Born and Bred, maybe look on your church's music player. Last but not least, the 4 songs off the AJR EP are also currently lost, with one song, The World is a Marble Heart, which is pretty alright, making its way onto Living Room, which is still on Spotify. So that song isn't lost, given that the EP version of this is the same one as Living Room's. The song Snow Globe from this EP has also been uploaded onto YouTube, but some people have said that this song had a couple different releases, and this might be the single version or something like that. It's not very clear. This is a very big jump from Born and Bred, and it's pretty good in my opinion, but Jack does still sound like he's an 8th grader, which he actually was when this song came out. A few fans dubbed this song as their first real indie or alternative song, which makes a lot of sense, because Living Room is the first instance of this kind of sound being heard from them, and the one song that made it onto that album from this EP does still have the same sound to it. It makes me want this EP found even more, knowing that what is still available from it is honestly pretty good and much closer to what AJR is known for now. For the sake of brevity and because I don't want to say the SC word since we all know what Five Nights at Freddy's is and who its creator is, I'll be calling him John FNAF and skipping the prologue on what Five Nights at Freddy's is. Hit the Goog if you need a refresher on what Five Nights at Freddy's is real quick and then come back to me. Everyone knows what FNAF is, but not a lot of people know that John FNAF had many other failed games prior to this indie horror hit, with many of them being Christian-friendly games and heavily inspired by or based on the religion's teachings. Since most, if not all, of these games come from a very poorly socially educated point of view for the sake of religious belief, I will not be talking about these games unless, of course, they are important to the subject I will be covering. A 2013 game made by John FNAF named Chipper & Sons Lumber Co. would end up being the main inspiration for Five Nights at Freddy's, after receiving criticism that the anthropomorphic characters looked, quote, unintentionally terrifying. Being criticized so harshly sent our dear John FNAF into a personal depression, which he would come out of by embracing the criticism and using his newfound skill of designing disgusting looking animals to create a horror based on animal animatronics. Other than his foray into games, John FNAF was also part of a movie studio that created Christian direct-to-video films aimed at children. Much sooner in his career, these movies would utilize the impressive 3D modeling that he's known for, and from the many films he helped make, one set of shorts stands out. Bird Village is a set of 5 shorts, 3 of which are confirmed to be about 15 minutes long, 1 movie-length entry being 45 minutes long, and the final 5th entry having no confirmed runtime. The plot of this series follows a group of 4 birds who would go on these little day-to-day adventures in these shorts. 3 of the 5 entries were released on VHS and titled Volume 1, which sort of insinuates that there would be or is currently another VHS release of the series. The movie-length entry Bird Village the movie would most likely be released on its own, and an assumed sequel to this movie would have its own release, the final unknown entry, titled Bird Village Second Nest. The only reason we know of these final 2 entries is because of their being mentioned on John FNAF's personal website, where he listed them as sample works for a reference of his skill. Bird Village obviously has that early 2000s Christian CGI series jank, but John FNAF's animation and character design gives it a real personality, and I do compliment the very full-feeling settings that are usually absent in this type of content. The 3 shorts have been uploaded to YouTube, the movie is currently lost, and we don't have any solid proof that the second movie is a movie at all, or that it ever made it out of the studio. The only real hope we would have to find these things would be to find the VHS tapes for them, or to find advertisements for the then upcoming entries on other productions by John FNAF. During the years of the MMO, which are widely considered to be the 2000s and early 2010s, many brands were creating online worlds for all kinds of people to explore. Many of these MMOs were directed towards children, with big names like Club Penguin, Wizard 101, and Animal Jam being some of the top contenders. One of these MMOs was Toontown Online, an MMO created by Disney and based off of the Toontown portion of Disneyland and the characters that resided within it. Players would create their own resident of Toontown, being able to choose an animal to play as and dress up to their liking. It functions almost exactly like Wizard 101, with players needing to acquire comedic, Wile E. Coyote type weapons to battle robotic NPCs wandering the streets of Toontown. The funniest thing about this game is that the in-game enemies are these evil corporate businessmen who want to basically drain Toontown of its fun and humor and make it more economical and business driven, and the game basically ended up shutting down because it was no longer making corporate Disney enough money. So in the end, the robots won. Toontown lived for a good 10 years between 2003 and 2013, making most of its money from subscriptions to the game's premium membership, which allowed players to get exclusive collectibles, weapons, and clothing for their character, again, like how Wizard 101 featured. During the game's time, it was nominated for and won multiple awards, and gained a large player base of mostly younger players. The game boasted a relatively good safety model and kept kids entertained for a long time. Because of the sudden decision to shut down the game and the announcement prior that it would shut down in September of 2013, many players were sad to see Toontown go, and many of those fans even extended an effort to create rewrites of it, some successful and some not so lucky. However, in creating these rewrites, it has been discovered that many of the game's early assets have since gone lost, with the only ones being preserved being those that could be obtained in the short time before the game closed. Much of what is lost are assets from the game's beta stages. We have a few images of what the beta contained and what it should look like, should anyone find any sort of additional content from it. The beta appears to have some different screens for defeats and the chat box, and also has a different layout for Toontown in general. A primary image even shows that, in the beta, players could possibly have been able to choose or obtain different colors for their gloves, which are always white by default in the final game. The lead developer on the game has been contacted directly directly and asked about whether or not he possibly has the files required to piece together and run the beta or even alpha of the game, but he has stated that even if they were still around in his possession after so many years, he wouldn't be at liberty to just give them out without permission from Disney. Many people wonder what the benefit might even be to finding these assets, since they were such early designs, but they do have the potential to be used to form a truer version of Toontown and even expand on or improve it, like how I mentioned with the gloves. There have been many real leaks of assets for the game, and according to the Lost Media Wiki entry on the topic, there have been long-standing rumors that a CVS or concurrent version system leak may occur, which means that all of the clients that were made for Toontown from its beginning to its end could be dumped from this. Most of my viewers, if not all of them, are likely familiar with Danny Phantom, an animated Nickelodeon series from the 2000s that focused on the teenage Danny Fenton, a boy who finds himself in possession of powers allowing him to transform between a normal boy and a ghost superhero to battle ghosts bent on escaping the capture of his ghost-hunting parents. What a complicated life to live. Created by Butch Hartman, who you may also know for making The Fairly OddParents, and for plagiarizing art that he isn't equipped to create himself, Danny Phantom ran on Nickelodeon from 2004 to 2007, and amassed 53 episodes in its run. At the beginning of each of these episodes, of course, as most cartoons do, Danny Phantom would open up with a theme song and an accompanying set of visuals to go along with it. The opening sequence to this cartoon has become just as iconic as the show itself to those who remember it. But it might not have always been this iconic theme that got attached to the show. In one case, in a video discussing the show's creation that was uploaded to Butch Hartman's YouTube channel, the composer for many of Hartman's productions, Guy Moon, explained that there was another version of the song made during production that didn't end up making the cut.
Yeah, I mean, you try to encapsulate the entire show in like 45 seconds.
I know.
That's the goal.
Yeah, it's tricky. And then to make it catchy and make it a song people want to hear over and over again, that's really tricky.
Yes. And I think it took us 3 versions by the time we landed on the final one.
Yeah, I don't even know if I have the third version. Do you have the third version out there anywhere?
Yeah, I keep all that stuff.
Whoa, there's a third version. You're not going to see it right now, though.
Almost nothing is known about this version in particular, as the only evidence we even have of it existing comes from word of mouth from the man who made it himself. No copies of the song or any possible accompanying visuals have been found of this version, but there is a second, partially found version that we have more of to look at. This version of the song has a much more laid-back tone, and instead of functioning like a punchy, almost rap-like action-oriented theme, this song is almost downtrodden in comparison, and has completely different lyrics, but mostly the same notes and chord progression. A fully animated opening unfortunately doesn't accompany the recording of this version of the song, but there is an animatic that has been fully pieced together to go alongside the music. People have noticed that some shots of this animatic can actually be seen fully finished in promotions for Danny Phantom from before it aired, so it can be reasonably deduced that there is a fully animated version of the animatic to have served as the original opening for the show. This proposed opening is currently lost, and from what I know, I haven't heard of many people looking for this, despite it possibly being an additional, fully animated piece of Danny Phantom media that fans could have and appreciate. Maybe with some more extensive searching and some dedication, we might be able to find out more about what this was. So that's it for this one. I kind of love doing this series, being able to just kind of relax about what I choose to put in the video, and just do so based on what I personally think is interesting. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.